Cool. So today I'm going to be talking about community and culture and curiosity. In 2014, I was living in New York, and I was craving a different kind of community. There are lots of different communities, and I was craving something that I didn't have access to. A different way to engage with the Arab world and Arab culture. Like, there are standard ways to engage with the Arab world and just the region and culture. Way number one is partying with Arabs. Those are your weddings, your reunions. Standard way. Do not take that way away from me. I love that way. So way number two, I'm sure all of you are aware, is activism, right? Those are your documentaries, your fundraisers, your protests. That is a way that I engage with the entire region and the entire culture. I love that way. I do not want anyone to take that way away from me. But there was a third way that I was really looking for, and it was something a little different. And it had to do with like thinking and talking about interesting things, like basically the way I live day in, day out, whether it's talking about architecture or history or music. For some reason, I just didn't have that type of way to engage with this whole region. And in order to create that way, I needed to create a completely new space. And so I decided to create a space that was dedicated specifically to a communal exploration of Arab history and culture, but decidedly one that was devoid of any personal agenda or any sense of activism. And the reason why I did that was because those places exist already and they're already great. But this space didn't, for me at least. So that's what Afikra is. Afikra is basically a monthly salon-style speaker series that takes place and features two 45-minute presentations on a facet of Arab history or culture that is interesting. Okay, so what, is it like a mini TED Talk? Is it like you guys are doing a mini TED Talk and think you're doing something interesting? Is that what you're doing? Okay, no, that's not what it is. And it's not that for a couple of different reasons. Reason number one, it's not that. We care more about curiosity than we do expertise, okay? In fact, we actually actively tell our presenters, we do not want you speaking on the subject on which you're an expert. The whole idea behind Afikra is that you are supposed to showcase your curiosity. You're supposed to learn something new. You're supposed to flex the curious muscle. Number two, another reason why it's kind of different and kind of special is that the idea is to focus on less explored topics, right? So like not the stories on the front page, right? Kind of like look at the style section, read the culture section, look past the first page stories. The first page stories are important. They're super important. But like, let's talk about the other ones too. Another way that it's different is that presenters are always members of the communities. We never invite random professors and say, hey, come and talk for 45 minutes and then bounce and never be part of this community. You have to have attended a talk to be able to speak at a talk. You have to have listened to be able to speak. All presentations, and this one is super important, all presentations are strictly non-promotional. You cannot be promoting your LinkedIn page. You cannot be promoting your startup, although I'm sure it's awesome. You cannot be promoting even your own personal agenda. And that dynamic really changes the vibe of the room and all of a sudden makes it focus on promoting curiosity, on learning for its own sake, asking questions for their own sake. And you've probably noticed from these pictures, we do them in living rooms. Like, it is different. It feels different. Every event is free and open to all, and we try to make it feel homey and cozy and hospitable and intimate. Something that we don't have a hard time doing because half the people there are Arabs. The other thing to mention here that I forgot to mention is that you don't have to be Arab to come. You don't have to be Arab to present. You don't have to be Arab to come. The only requirement is that you have to be interested in the region, not from the region. Okay, so having said all that, let's put it into a single sentence. The mission of the organization is to cultivate curiosity around Arab history and culture and to create this global community of nerds who want to do this together, right? So there's two parts to that, right? There's the cultivation, and then there's the global part. So what is the deal with the global part? You're in a living room. How can a living room be global, right? So it started in New York 2 years ago, and then all of a sudden we had people coming from other cities to attend these events and started demanding that we should start these chapters in other cities. And this need wasn't unique to me or my group of friends, but was really a shared experience from people who cared about this region, whether they were in New York or in DC or et cetera. So these are the chapters we currently have in New York and Montreal, DC and Dubai. And within the next year, these are the chapters we hope to start. In Beirut, London, Boston, Amman. So if you live in any of these, you'll hear about these. And it's not only me, so there's a whole host of volunteers who work on this stuff. I think a bunch of them are in the audience, maybe in the audience. But there's a group in Dubai and Washington and all over. These are people who have full-time jobs as architects and designers and doctors, but feel really passionate about this work and feel really passionate about learning something new. So I told myself, hold on, let me just. Oh, nice, good job. Okay, so like now let's talk about the curiosity piece, where we talked about like the whole like global thing. So we're asking you to be super curious. Like, what is the point? Who cares about curiosity? What is so special about curiosity? And this is really the rub. The philosopher Christopher Wallace once said, "Tell me what your interests are, who you be with," and that's like pretty close. It's pretty close to what I'm trying to get at, but it's a little different because for me, I think it actually is, tell me what your interests are and who you are. Because if you don't have interests, you're nobody. You're not a person. You're just like this floating brain, right? And so the idea is really, the whole point of cultivating curiosity is that we are cultivating the humanities, right? Arts and history and culture are within the humanities, and they're called that for a reason. It helps us engage our own humanity. It's like to ask questions and to explore yourself and your own culture or a different culture is to explore who you are. The moment we stop doing that, the moment we stop asking questions and we stop exploring is the moment we give up our own agency, is the moment that we basically say, I'll just accept whatever narrative I'm hearing, however simplistic it is. So whatever narrative you hear about the Arab world or the region, if you don't actively ask questions and have that muscle like tone and firm, you're just going to have to take whatever you get. And so Afikra is really about like clenching that muscle and getting used to asking questions like, what is music like in Algeria? Who are the major architects that define the landscape in Yemen? Right? Like asking questions like, how is this region the way it is? So anyway, the way it starts, every single presentation starts by, it's community driven. You know, somebody applies and says, I'm kind of interested in this broad subject. And they end up working with members of our team to go from a big subject to a specific question. And from there, we flush out the question into a 45-minute presentation. And it's really 30 minutes plus discussion. So like an example, let's just go through one example. So it starts out with like a question with a question mark, not like a random question, like a question with a question mark. So like let's say the question is, how does technology impact the way Arabic script looks? Super simple question. Varying levels of complicated depending on how nerdy you are, right? And we lean towards very nerdy, right? So if you want to talk about that primary question, it has all these secondary and tertiary questions that follow. So for example, that question, which a woman named Noor Shamroun did, led to this presentation, which is like thinking about the Arabic script as a technological challenge. Whether that technology was bamboo sticks and the way you cut bamboo sticks being the reason why Arabic script looks the way it does, and so that technology impacted the way Arabic script looks on the paper, or whether it's literally the original printing presses and how the original printing presses had to be built to dictate how Arabic script looked on the printed page, or if it's how Arabic script had to be transitioned into type and thinking about all the challenges associated with creating real typography and coding in Arabic. Like these are all things that had to be discussed. So this is one example. There are, like in the last 2 years, we've done over 40 or roughly 40 presentations all over the world. And I'm just going to walk through a bunch of them. I'm not going to talk through them, but I just want you to get a sense of the way Afikra looks and feels across the last couple years. That's a broad sort of look into what the room really feels like. But this is a community. Like this is nothing if it is not a community. And the idea, the way we end every single talk is asking the community, what are you interested in? What are you curious about? The idea is that when you attend one of our events, that you walk away curious, more curious than you did when you walk in. And actually, at the end of every event, we ask people to nominate future speakers and submit questions that they're curious about. So I ask you, what are you curious about? What questions did you see up there that you said, yeah, I have no idea, and what about this? And what are the communities that you are either part of now that are scratching this itch? Or if they don't exist, you should totally be part of our community. It's like totally open. And if you're interested in finding out more, the easiest way to do it is go to afikra.com and like follow us on Instagram and stuff like that. Thank you so much for your time. A huge thanks to you guys for doing this, and thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Mikey. That was amazing. Next.